welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli, that's Danny Cannell, that's Bud Elliott. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and everywhere you get your podcasts on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe, smash that like, and come and join us in the chat, aka the Cover 3 tailgate, where they are concerned about the ants. I want to thank everybody for arriving to the Ant Memorial here on the Cover 3 podcast. Also, Matthew jumped in the tailgate to say that we might have done Mad Dog a bit dirty. You know, he's boasting a 61% completion percentage, 9 touchdowns passing, 3 touchdowns rushing. We'll see about that. I thought, how are the Ants doing? Are we calling it?
They ain't doing much of anything, actually. They are. I did get an email from the company when I hit return on Amazon, and they're like, "Yeah, it says in the fine print not to order if your temperature is going to be over 85 degrees." And I was like, "Bro, I'm not reading fine print on ants. I just hit order. All right, like I value my time more than just to read the description. It's like, cool. Here's ants. I give you the money. You give me the ants. That's kind of on you not to ship them if it's too hot, right?"
Like it's a drug deal. I give you the money, you give me the ants. We
right,
go
like
our separate ways.
I'm not going to take my time to read fine print on ants. Like I'm just hitting buy now.
I need an ounce of ants. How much?
It was funny. Like I was checking some of the feedback, and so it was mentioned that the episode had almost an instant reaction feel, that it got a little loopy, and I realized that something has happened here at this stage in the season. We've been saying the exact same things about these teams for 7 weeks. like we want football so bad, and so it's like our seriousness is kind of dropping as everyone's passion is ramping up. So yeah, we might fire off a few jokes, but we stick to our opinions, and we anxiously await new information from actually seeing football, so that when we can say I'm right, I'm wrong, and then be able to move on from there. So if it gets similarly loopy, just know we got football coming soon. It's just kind of where we're at in the calendar. But is that fair?
Totally, man. Like the only real stuff that changes our opinions on these teams now is if like somebody goes to practice and you really kind of feel differently about them, or somebody gets hurt, which
also
has been happening.
Yeah, as Tom and I were saying, that sometimes you get backed into such a corner because we've been saying the same thing since after the July 4th weekend, that now it's just been exacerbated. If you thought a team was awesome, now you think they're going 12-0. Mm-hmm. If you were kind of fading a team a little bit, now all of a sudden they're horrendous and they should shut down football altogether. It's just kind of the nature of having to repeat yourself. So we're excited for the season. We appreciate y'all rocking with us. All right, loaded Big Ten win totals. I mean, just like most of the teams that we are expecting to compete for top spots in this conference. We did tackle the Michigan Wolverines and, of course, the Illinois Fighting Illini, the big headliners on Monday. Make sure to go check that out. Today, we're going to do everything Ohio State through Wisconsin. But first, let's do a quick run through some buzz.
Players that are making a buzz. Camp buzz. Camp buzz. Camp buzz. Talking about players that are buzzing.
We got to run through some starting quarterback announcements in Tuesday's CBS Sports show. What?
Like I feel like these are all like we know.
No, I said we got to.
Oh, sorry. I thought you said we had to do more of these. Like these are all like known.
We got to, and you have the opportunity to go and check out that information at youtube.com/cover3 or wherever you get your podcast. We had the opportunity in the past tense to tackle some starting quarterback situations, which is why I'm glad that here on Wednesday's show, we're going to be able to turn the spotlight elsewhere, including a couple notes that you're going to need to know for week 0 and Thursday's week 0 locks. Bud, what's buzzing?
So Christian Miller, defensive tackle at Georgia. This is a guy that Georgia had to fight real hard to keep in the offseason in the transfer portal. And, Georgia's had some D tackles who have not been available so far in fall camp. In fact, 2 of their better guys have been pretty limited. Don't know if they're going to play in that Clemson game. But Kirby Smart had a lot of good things to say about Christian Miller. So this is why you recruit, why it's important to have those, DT3, DT4 back there and make sure you get them signed those NIL deals so they don't go elsewhere. But that apparently he's going to have to play a bigger role for UGA than I had anticipated them doing, maybe about a month ago. Really sad news here. Georgia Tech tight end Brett Seether is going to miss the season. It really sucks for him. I had read that his mother had passed a couple weeks ago. Man, so our hearts go out to that kid. Like that, Jesus. You know, I don't know how you transition to it. Like on the football field, they like to run a lot of 2 tight end sets. They lost both their tight ends last year. They're undrafted free agents, I guess, who may have a chance to make a roster. So we'll have to see, you know, in that week 0 game in Ireland, you know, what they're going to do operating wise. I guess he got hurt in the second scrimmage, which wasn't that long ago, like maybe a week ago. And then Pat Garwo, finally some good news for Nevada, because I feel like everybody on Nevada is hurt. He's not hurt anymore. He is full go, according to Coach Jeff Choate. So they will have somebody to hand the football to when they play SMU.
Yeah, that's got to be the game plan for the Wolfpack. Again, we'll be getting our win totals locks in and our week 0 locks in on Thursday. Lots of different ways to attack that game. That is SMU at Nevada on CBS Sports Network with an 8 p.m. Eastern time kickoff.
Did we get a chance on the show to talk about Rutgers losing Mo Torre?
No, I meant to put that on the rundown.
Yeah, that's a big deal for Rutgers.
It's a huge deal because they also are let me pull up my Rutgers page. There's another guy for Rutgers who I think they expect to get back at some point this season, but he's one of their top linebackers as well and had some kind of Achilles thing. I think it's Tyreen Powell.
Tyreen Powell, yep.
So there's sort of a cascade effect there with Rutgers linebackers, and they do play a pretty good run game early in the season named the Hokies. So that certainly could hurt Rutgers there. There's another injury that I'm pretty sure is legit, but I don't want to drop it on here right now in the Big Ten, who's an even bigger deal than Mohamed Torre. And I haven't seen our 24/7 sports site confirm it yet, but we'll probably have that tomorrow. Enough people have kind of hinted at it, but if we get it during the show, I guess we'll discuss it.
Well, yeah, and Danny, you got a chance to talk to Greg Schiano at Big Ten Media Days, and he talked about the level of talent. I mean, this to me sounds like one of the players that has Greg Schiano taking that very strong chest and puffing it out and like making it seem like, you lose him. That's one of those real difference makers.
I was, doing our research for our win total today, looking at Rutgers, and this was an injury that came up that had me swaying somewhat on my decision on where to go over or under with Rutgers. So it's that significant of a loss. It's not your running back who Tom Fornelli is not in love with, Kyle Monungai, but it still could be an important position nonetheless. And it is one of their better players. So yeah, it's definitely going to clear him. Did you guys, it's not a huge buzz because I think everybody was expecting it, but I did notice Lance Leipold said that Jalen Daniels cleared to start week 1, right? That was everybody's expected that. He was given off last year to be there. He still sounded cautious. And I guess you would be. I guess you would absolutely have trepidation after a player who's missed as much time with him with a back issue. It makes me nervous for Kansas listening to Lance Leipold's voice. And it's in the sound. It's literally like you can hear him talking about it being like, yeah, he's cleared. We hope he's going to be good. And they don't have the luxury of Jason Bean behind him. Now it's going to be a younger Cole Ballard if something happens to Jalen Daniels. So just something to keep an eye on. Like that back is going to be something that clearly, like we were joking about Rutgers and how serious it is with a non-quarterback. But if Jalen Daniels goes down, much more concerned about Kansas than I was even last year.
Do you think that's because he's 60 years old and the idea of a bad back is just terrifying?
Maybe. Because I feel his pain. Yeah, but I also think it's a player that remember the start of last year, there was so much indecision. Is he going to play? Is he not going to play? And then they shut him down. And it was just, I think he's probably watched the rehab process unfold. And I'm sure there were times last year, like you see with backs, where you're like, hey, you good? And the guy's like, yeah, I'm good. And then you get out there, you get a couple good runs in, and it's like, I tweaked it again, and you're just not the same person. So I hope he's an incredible player, and I feel like he's kind of forgotten about, if he's fully good and he doesn't have any issues, he could win Big 12 Player of the Year. But if he does have issues, we'll see how it impacts him.
Correct me if I'm wrong on this, but our backup situation drops to redshirt freshman Cole Ballard. He had one start. He had a 36 pass attempts, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions, 55.6% passing.
Yeah.
Didn't he have
he's
to
got
play
another
him?
year, but
Didn't he have to play at Kansas State some last year?
He was forced into action because if Bean got knocked at all, he had to get thrown into the game. So
that was the game that I was convinced that Leipold really is an actual wizard. So to roll into Kansas State and actually be in that game for a little bit was
the 2 picks against Kansas State came against them, and it looked a little overwhelmed. There was a late game, 2-minute situation. He just looked overwhelmed, which is expected for a freshman. So he does have another year of experience. He's got a lot more reps. We'll see if the depth is better for Cole Ballard, son of Chris Ballard, Indianapolis Colts GM.
Great recall, Danny. You've been diving back into the old Kansas State-Kansas game, doing a rewatch on that 31-27 instant classic. Let's go. All right. We've got win totals locks tomorrow, but one more time, since it is the Big Ten, Tom, are you ready to count them up?
I am.
As much as I think the under is a safe play, I can't even.
Count them up. Count them up. How many games y'all gonna win this fall?
I can't fathom 8 wins.
How many games y'all gonna win this fall?
I just can't. I don't see it. It's not on there.
It's
not the schedule I'm looking at. Unless there's another schedule somewhere.
And we begin with a look at the Big Ten favorites, the Ohio State Buckeyes. At FanDuel Sportsbook, where you can make every moment more, the over-under win total is at 10.5. And this thing moved 10 cents in the last 48 hours. So I pulled all the prices on Monday, minus 150 to the over, as I pulled them last night, minus 160 to the over, plus 130 to the under. We've been talking about this team all off season. We know their personnel extensively. So now with your feet held to the fire, Danny, which way are we going with the Buckeyes?
I think this is easy, and I know it's juiced heavily, so you got to pay up for it, but I'm on the over. I just, when I run down the schedule and look at the talent of this team, granted there are questions with Will Howard. That's my biggest concern, is how does he fit? How does he handle the pressure? How does he handle, Chip Kelly's offense? You've got plenty of runway to get your feet wet with Akron, Western Michigan, Marshall, at Michigan State before you come home for Iowa, which could be tricky. But I feel like the defense could be a defensive battle, but I don't think Iowa's going to be putting up a ton of points against Ohio State's defense. There's 3 potential hiccups. I do have them losing in Eugene to Oregon. So then it's all right, there's 1. And then where's the second? Penn State, they've dominated the last 11 of 12 meetings. I think they've won. I'm not that worried about that game. And then if they get that one, is it Michigan or Penn State? Are they going to lose both? I have them as a 1-loss team. I think they are driven. I think they're motivated. I think they're ticked off of watching what Michigan has done. And you know what else I think? I think Georgia and some of the other teams that have tougher schedules have to look at this one and be like, man, you guys have it made.
Yeah.
Some of those
You've
SEC
already
teams.
heard. I mean, that is the echo throughout the throughout the echo chamber that is Southeastern Conference fandom. Everyone is just pointing up to Columbus about that soft schedule, ignoring that they've got to play, 3 top 10 teams, So, yeah.
Yeah, like that weekend when Georgia's playing UMass and they get to see Ohio State has to play Indiana, they're like, man, I wish I had that schedule.
Hey, listen, UMass is basically half of an SEC partner with how many SEC teams they're playing. Kind of like Murray State and teams in the
Hey, congrats to the SEC. They found a way to get 2 FCS teams on the schedule. Good for them.
And to be fair, I want to make sure I'm getting accused of being an SEC homer. There are teams in the SEC which have cakewalk schedules. Missouri, Texas A&M are some. The Georgia, the teams that are up here at the 10.5 win, total. This one's the one I look at. I'm like, man, I don't see how they lose 2 games.
And yes, before Georgia fans get all whatever, I understand you guys are playing Clemson. It's a joke. Relax.
Again, our serious is down. Your passion is up. Sorry, we're gonna fire a couple off here. All right,
Let's go.
Tom, where are you going?
Over. It's. I'm mostly in line with Danny here. Like, this is the most talented team I think in the country, and when you look at the schedule, like the non-con truly is like. They have tried to follow Michigan's lead so many ways in recent years that they looked at Michigan's non-con the last couple of years. They're like, all right, we got to start doing that. So Akron, Western Michigan, and Marshall all at home to start the year. Those games will be over by halftime every single week. You start off your road games in the Big Ten. You've got Michigan State, Oregon, Penn State, and then Northwestern, but that's at Wrigley Field. That'll mostly be Ohio State fans. So like, obviously, you'd rather not have to play both Penn State and Oregon on the road. But of those two, Oregon is the only one that genuinely concerns me right now. Maybe I'll feel differently about the Penn State game by the time we get to it in November. And then there's the Michigan game at the end of the season. So when you break it down, it's a 3-game schedule for the most part. And your question is, can Ohio State go 2-1 in those 3 games? I think more often than not they do. So over 10.5. Although I'm not betting it because the juice is a little, it's a little heavy.
I agree with you. I'm not like personally betting this. I am going over. I think Will Howard and this offense with how they should be able to run the football is kind of like a low variance operation. You sort of know what you're going to get. I think the defense is extremely low variance operation. I mean, how many touchdowns will Ohio State's first team defense allow before that October 12th trip to Oregon?
Oh,
I mean, because Danny played on a 93 team where I think they went, was it till Halloween where the first team defense outscored the opponents they were playing?
Yeah, it was something insane.
It's like, because it was the
Like,
Derek
the
Brooks team. They
goal
had
was
like
to
7
pitch a
pick sixes in
shutout.
the first month.
Like the goal, and it was not like a joke or like a long shot. It was to pitch a shutout. Like, that was the goal. Like, was to not let them
100%.
score. I think there might be one fluky one in there, but like, seriously, the other team should not score on them.
Akron, Western Michigan, Marshall, Michigan State, Iowa. Like, will Ohio State's first team defense allow a touchdown before it plays Oregon?
Yes. I'm
Hold on.
going to go out on that limb.
Yes, but
I'm not entirely sure. Okay, will it be a
will.
touchdown drive of more than 60 yards? Like, not off
Yes.
the turnover? Okay.
Yes.
Ooh.
Youngstown State scored a first half touchdown in
That's
the shoe
right.
last year.
That's right.
If you're going to let the Penguins get into the end zone,
Yeah,
no.
there's a fluky play, a miscovered, somebody screws up, a trick play. There's always that in there.
But
You can't game
point
plan for
is-
Marshall. Marshall will go into South Bend and beat you. They're going to come and put up a touchdown on the Buckeyes.
but I think your point is spot on, because no team until Michigan scored more than 17 points on the Buckeyes defense last year. That was, to me, the real renaissance that we saw from Ohio State. That while there was frustration with the run game that never really got going, there was frustration with, the Kyle McCord, the offensive line, and whether or not Maserati Marv was getting highlighted, or able to flourish alongside all those other superstar wide receivers. The thing that was a rock for Ohio State was what Jim Knowles was able to continue to build on with that defense. You bring back most of your best players and you add Caleb Downs.
Yeah.
It's stupid, like low variance. Like, that is what is, I'm not good at investments. What's the most steady investment that you have? Because Ohio State's defense might be the most reliable investment in all of college football.
I've just got my index funds. I think those are the steadiest.
Okay. All right. Ohio State's
Ohio
defense.
State's like Vanguard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. There we go. Yeah. That's the line. Come on. Trot it around radio stations across the country and on Dusty and Danny in the morning.
I like it, man. And I don't know who the quarterbacks are that are going to beat this defense. Man, I like Dylan Gabriel, but I don't love Dylan Gabriel, right? He's kind of an accumulator, longtime college guy. He's not going to be a top end of the draft type dude. Maybe Drew Aller gets it together for Penn State. Maybe he doesn't. Is a freshman Raiola going to go into the shoe for Nebraska and really beat them? I can't see that happening. Northwestern Indiana, no. Michigan, whether it's Davis Warren or Alex Orji, I don't really see them winning in Columbus. Stranger things certainly have happened before, and they could again. I'm going to go over.
Let's make it a clean sweep. I am also going to go over. I do think Dillon Gabriel is let me rephrase this. I think Dillon Gabriel is good enough to beat Ohio State's defense. I think Dillon Gabriel plus the rest of the offense as a whole, offensive line with a couple really good tackles and, still building off even what they lost last year, a couple good running backs, Jordan James leading the way, in a wide receiver room that has been restocked. Will Stein's like the joystick, right here, just telling you like where to throw it, how to put them in space, and how to score a touchdown. And I think that's the spot to your point, Danny. I've got them losing in Eugene when you make me do it game to game, but I think at Penn State's going to be tough. I've got 11-1, but in this case, 11-1 is a over.
How many games are going to win this fall?
In what may be one of the most anticipated seasons in Oregon football history. Maybe that's going too far, but
power rank the most anticipated Oregon seasons in history. Go.
I think 2014 had all of the buzz and delivered. We knew that Mariota was really, really good. They'd been knocking on the door. I would say the next one would probably be the year after they lost to Auburn. So that would be like 2011.
What was the year Harrington was on the cover of the video game?
2003.
Okay, I'd say that one's up there.
Yeah.
His Times Square billboard one.
Yeah.
So the 2002, it was college football 2003, so it might have been 2002. So one of the most anticipated seasons in Oregon football history.
The year where they had LaMichael James, and what's the other two running? DeAnthony Thomas and Kendrick Barner. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that was coming out of the appearance, those 11-12 seasons after getting to the championship game. Definitely had some buzz, but you got year one
has more. Dang it, Tom. Don't rain on their parade. What were their national championship odds those years? Were they as strong as this year?
Were you joining the Big Ten? Were you preseason top 4?
Chip was out here saying it was the most anticipated. I wanted a power ranking. I wanted him to back it up. I don't want just empty words. I want to know that he's been digging into it, and he has been. He proved it.
Yeah, and their win total's 10.5. Over -118, under -104 at FanDuel Sportsbook, where you can make every moment more. Bud, let's break it down schedule-wise. The Ducks are not free of challenges, but they can't play themselves, and they don't play Penn State, but they do play Ohio State and Michigan. How do you think it all shakes out?
I'm over here. I said it when we were at Big Ten Media Day. I don't think that this conference, past the first couple teams, has quarterbacks that should scare these elite teams. And I think a lot of these upsets are sprung by good quarterback play. And I think they are playing, in many cases, downright bad quarterback play down the stretch of this schedule. I mean, Ohio State's pretty tough. They go to Michigan. Those are two of your really losables. I'm not real high on Wisconsin. And so I think Oregon's going to be double digits in that game, even in Madison. And I think they are well over that in all of their remaining games as well, including like 20 plus in most. So I think they go 11-1 or 12-0.
Same. I'm on, and for a lot of the same reasons that Bud just gave. I was going to give the one conversation we had when we were in Indy was how top heavy it is with those 4 teams and how there's this gap. So you look at where the losses come from. Non-conference is manageable. I think the Oregon State game is a trap game. Going to Corvallis is going to be, it's going to be their Super Bowl, right? No conference, no more Pac-12. But I still think they have enough talent to pretty much overwhelm a team with the new coach and lost a lot of talent. I mean, they're going to be a 3 touchdown favorite in that game potentially. I mean, they should be able to handle them.
I mean, they might be 24.5.
Yeah, I mean,
they should be like 30.
Yeah, so they'll be heavy favorites in that one, even though it is a rivalry game. The Michigan game, probably in Ann Arbor, is the one that concerns you. But again, I had them beating Ohio State at home. And then even if I don't know, I think there's a chance they go 12-0. I'm bullish on this team. And I would say about Dillon Gabriel, because I do agree with you. I think he's perfect fit for this system. Very similar with what Bo Nix, like skill set wise and what they're going to ask him to do. and I think he's going to execute the offense in a very similar fashion. We did have somebody ask what was Dan Lanning's signature win, and I would say it was 2 years ago against Utah at home, the year that Utah ended up winning the Pac-12 that season. But it is a question mark because he's hasn't beaten Washington. He's had, some opportunities where he's come up short, but I think those wins will come this year.
I mean, what's Ryan Day's signature win?
Right.
He beat Notre Dame in South Bend.
And he wants to
I'd like to know where Lou Holtz is right now.
Sheesh.
I'm also on the over, but you guys have gone over all the positives, so I will take a different breath here, and I will point out some concerns. We've talked about Dylan Gabriel and his durability in previous years. There is a chance that if he gets hurt, what happens to this season? Like they have Dante Moore behind him. Is Dante Moore ready to take over the starting role? We saw he struggled a little bit at UCLA. We have talked a lot about Oregon's offensive line. They're getting a bit nicked up. I don't know if you guys have been paying attention. They've been lost a couple of guys.
Glad you
not
went
like
here.
for the season, but yeah, they're dealing with some stuff that could have an impact. Another thing is they've got their first, they've got their 3 non-con games before their bye. But then after the bye, they're playing 8 straight games about a week off. Injuries at that point could be a problem. And then finally, this program has the audacity to schedule homecoming for Illinois. Like you schedule teams on homecoming that you just expect to beat by 40 points. And they're thinking that they're just going to crush my Illini. Man, that's some nerve, Dan Lanning. I will never forgive you for that, especially because it's the week before you go on the road to Michigan. So talk about a trap game, just Illinois homecoming between 2 roadies. Oh, I'm taking the Illini on the spread that week, boys. Maybe a money line sprinkle. But no, I do think overall you look at this schedule in a vacuum, it's Ohio State and Michigan games.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as they win one of those, they're going to finish over in all likelihood.
Over. Let's go. I'm going to pick up the baton where Tom dropped it. The game at the end of that 8-game run is at Wisconsin. Now, Wisconsin is a team with a lot of question marks, but if you play out the Tyler Van Dyke hits, the offense is humming, the defense is really good. If you play all of that out where they are running at peak efficiency, then playing in Camp Randall as the 8th game in a row in the middle of November could be dicey. I'm over. Again, I'm over on this one, but that you're Illinois at home, then at Michigan, then Maryland at home, then get back on a plane, go back to Madison, ping pong, at the very end of that run, maybe. But ultimately, having to call it one way or the other, I've got Oregon beating Ohio State, losing to Michigan. It is 2 games. You split it up. I'd absolutely see an 11-1. And the way that I sort of imagine the Big Ten title game is they're going to play a classic on October 12th, and then we'll get a rematch on December 7th in Indianapolis in the Big Ten title game to decide who gets a bye in the college football playoff. So I am also on the over.
Did you mention Wisconsin coming off a bye that week too?
Ooh.
Yeah, they are.
They're going to need it because they play Penn State, Iowa back-to-back before that.
Yeah.
Man, Big Ten's a meat grinder.
That's right.
Enough people are not talking about how, it's just different having to go through a Big Ten schedule week to week.
You know why the offenses move so slow in the Big Ten? Because they have to pace themselves, guys. Like when you deal with this meat grinder week in and week out, you can't be going 100 plays a game. You're not going to survive the season. You got to take your time and conserve yourself for late when it matters. You got to store body fat for when the cold, cold winter comes.
Wait, has Illinois been scheduled twice
For homecoming? Yeah.
Are they everyone's homecoming?
And one of the teams that scheduled Illinois for homecoming lost their last home game to Illinois. I might add Penn State. Maybe you
So that's the
forgot.
2-point conversion thing?
Yeah, the 9 overtime loss. It's been years since you beat Illinois at home, and you're scheduling us for homecoming? Come on.
Coming up on the other side, we turn our attention to those Penn State Nittany Lions, which have scheduled Illinois for homecoming and are hoping to be able to notch a couple other key home wins on their way to their first college football playoff appearance. Will they have enough victories to get there? We'll get into that and more Next.
Count them up.
The Penn State Nittany Lions have an over-under win total of 9.5 at FanDuel Sportsbook, where you can make every moment more. The over, minus 172, while the under is plus 140. Bud, they've got to go into a hornet's nest to start the season. But if they can get out, you've got a draw that does not include an Oregon. It does not include a Michigan. It does not include, and they can't play themselves. Does not include an Iowa either. So for Penn State at 9.5, how do you think this one's going to go for James Franklin's group?
I'm going to go over here. I think the top 10 or the top teams in this league are considerably better than all of the other teams in this league. And I think they all play really good defense. And I don't see the quarterbacks on the schedule to really threaten them all that much. Now, also, I don't know if Penn State has one at quarterback. We got to see if Alar can take that next step. Andy Kotelnicki, the new offensive coordinator, probably helps him out there. I think the defense, should still be really good. One aspect, and I did the Lions 247 podcast just yesterday, and I'm kind of excited about this. Penn State's like a lot beefier on the defensive interior this year. They're like 330 and 315. Mm-hmm. So it's not that kind of quick, just penetrating style that Manny Diaz ran, which was really effective for them. I'm not criticizing that, but I'm just saying stylistically, it will look different this year. I have Penn State as double digits in 8 games. The only 4 in which I do not think they're DD is the Mountaineers, USC, which is on the road, at Wisconsin, which is on the road, but after a bye, and then, of course, hosting Ohio State. So go ahead and give me the over.
I just appreciate this comment.
The Wayne Gretzky of going 9-3
is the Wayne Gretzky of going 9-3.
I will say, I would not bet this because you can bet Penn State to make the playoff at like minus $1.20.
Oh,
or well, maybe $1.30 now, but like certainly cheaper than minus 172.
Are there 10s out there?
Chip, for this show, we only use FanDuel, so I really have not been checking that. But possibly. But I again, like you remember the whole like eat this, not that thing, right? It's like this has 5,000 calories, says 500. Like bet this, not that. I think 10-2 Penn State, because they do play that non-conference game against the Mountaineers, is very likely in the playoffs. So I would rather bet that than bet the over on this.
If you wanted to bet on FanDuel, Penn State exactly 10, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
No. Penn State to make the playoff.
Chip.
Oh, no, but you're saying to get 10 wins exactly?
Yeah.
If you wanted that one, it pays out plus 240 for Penn State. That might be the play.
They lose at West Virginia and your bet's dead.
Oh, my gosh. I'll cash out $2.75, please.
Cash out.
My Monte Carlo simulations have Penn State winning 10 games more often than 9. But with the under sitting at plus 140, if I was betting this, I would rather bet the under 9.5. I do think, like, offensively, there are some concerns personnel wise. Like, you lost your best offensive lineman last year, which is difficult to replace. I still don't know who the premier receiver is going to be on this team, or if one of them will emerge. I think it would be nice also if Tyler Warren kind of emerged as a tight end for them in that spot. The running backs, we've talked for years about how talented they are, but when you look at the numbers, they're never putting up like elite numbers. Although the question becomes, was that the offensive line they were playing behind? Was it the offensive system they were in? And that's what kind of gives me optimism, is that with Andy Kotelnicki coming in, I have more optimism in this offense, even with the question marks I have with the personnel, because if he was able to do what he was able to do with the personnel he had at Kansas and the personnel he had at Buffalo, and granted, when he was at Buffalo, he wasn't facing Big Ten defenses, but the point remains, he gets guys open. He figures out ways to open up running lanes. And I think that could be huge for Singleton and Allen in this offense. I think it could be huge for Aller in that he's going to have easy throws to make, even if he doesn't have elite receivers that are getting tons of separation. I think they'll be able to get them open on their own. And defensively, I mean, they're Penn State. They will be fine. Like there are all like Harold Perkins gets compared to Micah Parsons a lot. If you want to find the Micah Parsons comp, just look at the school Micah Parsons went to. Abdul Carter is the Micah Parsons comp. I think that he has a chance to be the best pass rusher in the country this season. So defensively, they will be fine. Offensively, I have faith. So like I said, I think they win 10 games more often than not, but based on the juice, I would rather bet the under.
I mean, 25-2. Do you know how many teams would take 25-2? Over. Yeah, over 9.5. Exact wins 10. I've got this thing shaking out where I believe that Penn State will have an offense under different leadership that will allow for more explosive plays. I don't know that Julian Fleming is the answer. Not ready to bet on that. But the wide receiver groups at Kansas did not overwhelm you with the on-paper talent, and yet they were still able to develop those explosive plays. They had the 1-2 running back punch of Devin Neal and Henshaw. This time, I think you're upgrading in talent at both with Singleton and Allen. So I can see how this offense does get more explosive, but all in all, I think the defense is awesome, and I think the schedule sets up with only 3 toss-ups. So, yeah, I'm going to go over 9.5 with a little side chips on exact win total 10. 10-2 Penn State going on to the college football playoff.
How many games are going to win this fall?
Whew. Year 2 for Ryan Walters at Purdue. And the over-under win total at FanDuel Sportsbook is at 4.5. Over plus 142, under minus 178. Danny, we got Hudson Card with us. Enjoyed the conversation. Do we see 5 wins for Hudson Card's Boilermakers this year?
He was a really nice kid.
He was a great guy.
I really did like him a lot. I think it could be a rough year for him. I had him at 4 wins. Their schedule not as kind as some of the other ones.
Is what it is.
Yeah.
It is flat out brutal for a team that is trying to establish itself, kind of find its legs under them. I had them winning against Indiana State, losing against Notre Dame. On the road in Corvallis, I had them losing, maybe more of a toss-up. I like Nebraska, even though it is their homecoming game. I have Nebraska beating them. And then it gets tougher on the road at Wisconsin and Illinois. I have them losing both of those. Oregon, losing that one. Northwestern, I had as a toss-up, but I feel way better about Northwestern, even though it is in West Lafayette. And then to finish out the season, I had a really hard time confidently finding dubs on this schedule. I just think it's going to be another rough year for Purdue.
Yeah. Ryan Walters left Illinois for Purdue, and then he got to Purdue and found out they were still scheduling the way Illinois used to. Like this, if one of the things about the way the conferences have expanded that sucks, and what realignment has done is it kind of makes you have to reconsider how you do things. Like if you're Purdue, you have your rivalry with Notre Dame. You love your rivalry with Notre Dame, but now you've got to make a decision. Like if you want to be getting to bowl games, if you want to be competing for at-large berths, you probably can't be playing Notre Dame in your non-con anymore. So like to have a non-con that features Notre Dame at home and then a road trip to Oregon State, and then add that to a schedule that includes Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State. Like you're asking way too much of your team when you are at the level that Purdue is at. So like this schedule is a monster. I think this team will actually be better than the Purdue team we saw last year, but I don't see it reflected in the results because of who they have to play. So I'm taking the under. I think this is like, if you're 4-8, you should be happy with this schedule.
I'm right on the number here, given the juice. So I'm going to go ahead and just be an optimist and take the over. Again, like if I'm right on the number, that's no edge, so I'm not betting it. Don't rush to the window based on my no edge advice there. But Indiana State, as Tom said, is a win. I think Oregon State is definitely winnable. Northwestern, they're probably favored. Northwestern is at home.
Northwestern's home.
Right. Oh, and Oregon State's on the road.
Yeah.
Michigan State, Indiana are both pretty winnable. Ultimately, to me, this comes down to, like, is at Wisconsin winnable? Is at Illinois winnable? Like, what do you think of those teams? How good are those teams? Because if Purdue is either a little bit better than we think, or if those teams are a little bit worse than we think, then over 4.5 plus 142 is not that bad of a bet. I don't have great confidence in those two teams, so I'm going to go ahead and go with the over.
And sorry to step on you here, Chip, but like part of the problem too, like 6 of your games are on the road, and that includes 3 of your last 4. Like you get Northwestern at home, then you're on the road for Ohio State, and then your senior day is Penn State at home, and you're finishing with 2 road games against Michigan State and Indiana, like 2 teams that you're looking at on an annual basis if you're a Purdue fan as teams that you think you can compete against and beat, and you've got to play both of them on the road. It's like by the time this season is over, if they are out of the bowl hunt and they're looking at 2 road games to finish the year, what kind of effort do you think we're going to get in those games?
This team off last year's group lost its best offensive player in Deion Burks, lost its best defensive player in Nick Scorton, and the schedule has all of the games where you're looking at it as this is our chance to get to a bowl game, and almost all of them are on the road. I mean, we're talking at Oregon State, at Illinois, at Michigan State, at Indiana. Those are 4 of 5 toss-up games, the way that I see this. Now, you know what? If Ryan Walters turns them into road warriors and they just, absolutely go on a tear, then they could be 6-6. But they could also be 3-9 really, really easily based on the way that this thing shakes out. Tom, I'm glad that you spun it that way. They could be making steps forward, but it is too many steps forward to think that they are going to be able to take down the likes of Oregon, Penn State, Notre Dame, Nebraska, Ohio State. So I'm kind of comfortably on the under here. Just don't love the home road splits for the toss-up games.
Now, that said, even in years where Purdue's bad, they still beat Illinois. So we should maybe consider giving them that win.
Well, I also was thinking about the spoiler makers, and even in years where Purdue is not a bowl team, they have been known to get somebody. And Oregon,
opportunities this year.
And there's a lot of opportunity. Yeah, that's the other side of this.
There we go. Let's spin it that way. Purdue's got so many chances to destroy somebody's season this year. Let's go get them.
If we take Purdue on the money line against, let's see, Penn State, Oregon, and Notre Dame, can they get us one, and would that be profitable?
Yes, it all
if they cash one of them.
Oh, if they do cash one, yes, it would almost certainly be.
Yeah, so the spoiler maker bet would be just looking at these home games against ranked teams, and just if you fire on every one of them, can you go get us one?
Mm-hmm.
There are plenty of opportunities.
Count them out.
On to the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. We discussed really, really disappointing loss of their best linebacker, one of their best defensive players earlier. But the win total, I mean, it still has them right there in the middle of the pack in the Big Ten. At FanDuel Sportsbook, where you can make every moment more, the win total is set at 6.5, over at plus 100, under at minus 122. Tommy buying into the Greek rifle?
No.
Okay.
I am not. Like, there has been a lot of buzz around this team this offseason, and I get it. It's just that buzz is not really built around the Rutgers football team. It's built around Rutgers' schedule. Like, in non-con, they've got Howard and Akron, which they'll win. They got the road trip to Virginia Tech, which will be tough. But in Big Ten play, like, Rutgers came to the Big Ten and they said, hey, welcome to the league. Here's Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State every single damn year. None of them are on the schedule this year. So when you look at it, you see Washington at Nebraska, Wisconsin, UCLA at USC is the toughest game. Minnesota at Maryland, Illinois at Michigan State. There's nothing on there where when you look at Rutgers and say they can't compete in these games. So I feel like it builds momentum to where everybody just kind of starts talking about that schedule, and they start, like we talked at the top of the show, you kind of just back yourself into a corner and people start painting themselves into a place where it's like Rutgers is going to be good this year. But as you mentioned, the quarterback is still 8th in Cali McManus. And him moving from Minnesota to Rutgers does not change my opinion of him. Like, I don't think this offense is going to have a dynamic passing game. I think Kyle Monangai is going to be stuck running into 8-man fronts pretty much all season. And we saw he can be successful doing it last year. It's just, can you count on Rutgers to win a bunch of games doing so? So with the total at 6.5, I think they can get to 7. I think they can get to 6. I think they can get to 5. I am taking the over because my projections have them at 6.6, but there is very little confidence in that in me.
Bud's looking at numbers.
No, I ran that as a 7.5 win total somehow. I was like, okay. Thank you for pointing out that my notes are wrong. It's 6.5. I agree with Tom. The only nitpick I would have on this schedule is they don't get to play Purdue and they don't get to play Northwestern. And I think there is a chance that those are the 2 worst teams in the Big 12. I mean, it could be Washington, it could be UCLA, but like, I think the odds are that those are probably your 2 worst, right? Indiana fans are really thankful that their name has not been called during this segment.
Win.
I'm worried about some of these injuries, man. I do think there's a difference though, because the conversation reminded me of like what we talked about with North Carolina, like how easy the schedule was. And I do kind of trust this coaching staff to take care of business in the games that they should win. They generally do. There's just not many of them that they actually should win normally. So I'm very slightly under. I think 6-6 comes up a whole lot of times. Not one that I'm, rushing to bet necessarily. I'm excited to watch these guys. Like, Calic Manis ain't good, but he's definitely better than Wimsatt in my opinion. So they're upgrading.
That's why I'm on the over. Like, as bad as the pass game was last year, I don't think it can get worse. Now it might be worse, but I think it's going to be a slight improvement. I mean, it was ineptitude at its best for Rutgers in the pass game last year with Wimsatt. I think Calic Manis I think he's actually like going to be really good in the play action pass game where you can run the ball like they want to, trust him to hit a check down if it's nothing there, potentially go over the top if they are loading up the box and kind of hit some shot plays, something that they really didn't have last year and had to rely more on the run game from the quarterback to develop some of those bigger plays. I don't know. I'm more of a believer in Schiano's building culture again at Rutgers. And I do think that I think the schedule does set up nice. Like, when I was going through it, I was having to talk myself out of wins. Like, all right, are we really at the point we can just trust Rutgers to chalk up a dub against Illinois? But I do. So I'm showing a little bit more faith than you guys. I'm going over.
I'm still high on what they're building there. Like, long term, I just think that people are being a little too excited about the season. And Calic Manis, are you sure he's a huge upgrade? Because at least Gavin Wimsatt could run. So now you're bringing in Calic Manis, who is not what I consider to be very mobile, which means you're kind of going to be running the quote unquote pro style offense. Do you want to run a pro style offense with this personnel?
So shout out to my buddy John. He actually ran a statistical analysis of this. And my theory that like when a coordinator goes out and gets a guy that he previously had, it usually works out. That's actually true as it relates to the player's floor. Those guys very rarely bust, but they also don't typically break out a whole lot, which could speak to maybe coordinators and coaches overvaluing previous familiarity with the player. But Soraka had Calic Manis in practice. Like, he never coached him in games, I'm pretty sure, but like, he was at Minnesota. I'm pretty sure he recruited him. So like, it's kind of important for him, I think, job wise, to actually, score points this year and help the team win. So if he's putting his chips on Calic Manis, I do think that there is probably a pretty decent chance that he's better than what they had with Wimsatt.
We'll get to answer this question more in full a little bit later. Are we sure Rutgers is can beat Washington?
See, I thought the same thing, but like, of the teams they play that are like tricky, where I was like, win or loss, Washington, new regime, like totally new staff.
Yeah.
I had the same for UCLA, like a game where we're trusting them. It's UCLA, new staff. Like, of the games that I was giving them dubs kind of one way or the other. Maryland on the road, like, new quarterback without Talia. Are we trusting them there? Like, I gave him that dub. It might be risky to give him that one, but
I've got 9 toss-ups.
yeah.
What are we defining as toss? Like single digit or just like under 7?
Yeah. The realm is like, in that, could be one score either way type scenario where like at Virginia Tech, I think it is a toss-up. I think they could go and win that game. But at the same time, even a Michigan State, even a Minnesota, like I'm not ready to all of a sudden give Rutgers a straight up W that way. So like the realm of results, the way that I see it, is extremely varied and may come down to injury luck and 1-score games.
Totally agree. I have them with 8 toss-ups. And I mean, if we're defining that as under a touchdown, and there is some chance that Nebraska really has his act together, and then that trip to Lincoln is no longer a toss-up.
I've got that as a toss-up right now.
I had that as a loss for Rutgers.
I do too.
Correct. Yeah. Well, toss-up. Can I just not count today? All right. Vatek, definitely a toss-up.
Yes.
At USC.
Disagree.
At USC.
Sorry, not a toss-up.
Loss for Rutgers.
Yeah, right. Like the ones that are not toss-ups. Vatek, USC. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, Chip, I think we're on the same page. I just can't count.
Like I'm kind of right on the 6.5. I will slightly lean to the under, but no real strong opinions on this one. They are a bowl team. I feel confident in saying they're going to get 6 wins. I have no idea which of those games it's going to be. Would not be surprised if they have 7 wins. And other than Howard and Akron, I don't know which of the other 5 are going to be to get us to 7. But definitely something to keep an eye on as they break in new quarterback and try to take a big step forward under Greg Schiano. All right, we got to do one more break. Coming up on the other side, we roll into the newcomers from Los Angeles, UCLA, USC, plus Washington and Wisconsin. Next.
College football is back. SMU at Nevada on CBS Sports Network.
Yeah, Grant in the tailgate says last season a preseason locksitis for Bud. So many numbers. I feel the same. It's all starting to flood together right now. Let's get ourselves some football starting on Saturday. All right, the UCLA Bruins over under win total at FanDuel Sportsbook, where you can make every moment more. A 4.5 over at -144, under at +118. Danny, we loved our visit from Deshaun Foster. Have you gotten the same bias that you and I have talked a lot about, where we talk to a coach and we come out and they're about a half win better, just if it's a good conversation? Does that apply here, or are you just going cold analysis?
Do you remember I got kicked to the curb on that one? So I was like off on the little side. I was trying to like eavesdrop on the interview. I didn't have the same impact.
You're objective. Yeah.
Right?
Here.
Yes, I am. I think it's going to be a rough year for UCLA. Talk about the schedule, too, is one of the tougher ones that we've looked at. A lot of West Coast to East Coast. The travel is going to be an issue. I think the amount of players they lost on the defensive side of the ball and their defensive coordinator leaving. Plus, I don't know how I feel about the Bieniemy hire, if that's going to work yet or not. I know there's been a lot of speculation about him as where's he going to be as a head coach? He's going to get that opportunity. So that's why he leaves the Chiefs, but it hasn't been great in the year he's been gone. I've got him under. I've got him 4-8. And a lot of it's because of the schedule. I mean, I had them winning their first 2, and even the Indiana game, I'm like, I think they're going to win. But I had more toss-ups and automatic L's than anything.
Yeah, this is another situation for me where it's like pure numbers-wise, I'm on the over, but with the juice and the betting-wise, I'd like the under more, but I'm not betting either side. The Hawaii game, I think, is huge right off the bat. Going on the road, winning that game, I think you absolutely have to have that to have any prayer of getting to the over here, which probably is not the most, profound thing to say. But Indiana at home to start off your Big Ten schedule after that bye, that's a winnable game. Oregon at home, probably not. Minnesota at home, sure. Iowa at home, yeah, you're going to be in that. USC at home, we'll see. And Fresno at home, that's a winnable game. In the road slate, LSU and Tiger Stadium, Godspeed, Bruins. Good luck to you. I just hope you get home Penn State on the road, going to be tough. Rutgers on the road. I just talked about my love for Rutgers this season. I can't rule them completely out there, but I like Rutgers more. At Nebraska is going to be tough. At Washington, maybe. So, like, I don't think the idea of UCLA getting to a bowl game is insane. I don't think the idea of them getting to 5 wins is insane, but I just don't know what this team is going to be yet because there are so many just X factors here that we don't know yet, that we can't really be sure. We've never seen Deshaun Foster as a head coach. We don't know how it's going to look. We don't know how it's going to play out. They lost quite a bit on defense. So this is one of those teams that, for me, I really need to see them playing games before I can be confident in doing anything about them.
I'm over. I don't think Garbers is all that bad, honestly. And
yeah, that's fair.
I think that if they stay healthy on the offensive line, that they're okay there, especially against a lot of the teams that they'll play. Not all, but the teams that I think you would probably need to beat to get over. And I think they have a top 5, if not better, receiving core in the Big Ten.
J. Michael Sturdivant.
They got some dudes who can go.
Yeah.
Like Titus at tight end's really nice. They got some guys who can play. Loya's like not that bad. You know, I think
if Rico Flores can finally live up to the
yeah, exactly. So I mean, how big of a dog are they at Washington? Like not a touchdown, maybe 3, maybe 4. Like that's a real home field advantage. But I mean, if both of them are out of the bowl race at that point, it's not like that place will be that packed. Fresno very well could be kind of focused on playing in the Mountain West Championship the following weekend. They host USC. That's not really much of a home field advantage, obviously, because it's the same city. So low travel adjustment there for that one.
Yeah, but it's like 9-hour trip. So,
well, yeah, that is true. Unless you get the police escort with the like the Rose Bowl media bus. Indiana at home is certainly beatable or winnable. I think they'll be probably favored and should be in that game, not by a whole lot. Stephen McBride is still not listed on the Hawaii depth chart. That's the Hawaii receiver who got suspended for some kind of incident and then reinstated. But like there's some kind of other eligibility issue that has not yet been resolved. I'm going to go over here. I don't hate this team. The one thing is, well, there's a couple things. I mean, obviously Foster's never been a head coach. Why is Bieniemy bounced around a whole lot? Like, is he actually a good offensive coach? We don't know. They had real dudes last year in the defensive front 7. Real dudes. I mean, the Murphy twins, they had Latu. Jay Toya's back, but I mean, Darius has gone to Gary Smith. Like, I hope he's healthy. I do worry about the front 7 drop off quite a bit.
I think when you consider travel, this is one of the most difficult road slates in the country. That, like, if you factor in the impact of having to, I mean, I know Los Angeles to Hawaii is one of the best ways you could get to Hawaii, but you still got to go to Hawaii. I guess, how about this? Of power conference teams. You have to do the back and forth that we've talked about, ping-ponging across the country. You also have to play at places like at Penn State, at LSU. These are some of the most daunting, like, road environments that you're going to have. Deshaun Foster was even telling us that he's concerned about what it's going to be like being out in those stadiums, that he was more concerned about his players handling the hostile environment than he was about the actual impact of the travel. That said, I do, like you said, like this team, Bud. I just really don't like the schedule. I am on the under. If everything hits, this could be a bowl team. And I don't think your over is that crazy. I just don't think, given all of the intangibles, betting on everything hitting is going to be my best way to go.
I don't know if you guys saw the huge breaking news.
Dylan
Raiola is Nebraska's starter. Nobody could have seen it coming. And now we know for sure.
Heinrich Arberg in shambles.
Just devastated.
Shocked.
He never saw it coming.
He really dropped the ball on this one. But thank you.
Whoopsie daisy.
Count them out.
The USC Trojans over under win total of 7.5 at FanDuel Sportsbook. Over -105, under -115. We got ourselves a nice even split. Tom, which side are you on?
It's complicated. I wrote last year, I was so ahead of the curve on USC that I wrote they could go 7-5 when they joined the Big Ten, and then they just decided to go 7-5 in
Five in their last
Pac-12.
year, Pac-12.
And now they come into the Big Ten and their win total is at 7.5. So it's like I really am setting the line for this team. And I think when you look at the schedule, it's easy to understand why the number is where it is. You start with LSU in Vegas. Your first Big Ten game is in Ann Arbor against the defending champs. You get Penn State coming to town. You have to go on the road for both Washington and UCLA. You do avoid Oregon, which is nice, but you also get Notre Dame at home to finish the regular season. Well, as long as, until Lincoln gets his way. But like I said earlier, that's something you really do need to reconsider at this time and place in college football. But there are just so many questions about this team. Like Miller Moss, we don't know what he's going to be, if he's going to be what we're used to seeing from Lincoln Riley quarterbacks. Yes, he had a tremendous bowl game, but we need to see it in games that truly matter and count. Defensively, they have completely overhauled everything. But again, I love the decision, and I think it's the right decision. But can we expect immediate progress? I think there needs to be more proof of concept there. So I look at the Trojans, and I think this is a team with a decent range of outcomes. I think that if everything clicks, this is a squad that could be playing in Indianapolis for a Big Ten title. I think if it doesn't click, this is a squad that could be struggling to get to a bowl game. So I'm taking the under 7.5.
I have a similar view to your last statement. I've got everything from 6-6 to 11-1 on the table. Like, yeah, everything from 6-6 to 11-1. Like,
So you're going over.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm going over. Yeah. I am over at 7.5. I think they could beat LSU. I think that you can take down Wisconsin and Penn State. They've got to come to you. Notre Dame as well. I mean, the splits there in some of those games are important to me. I'm not too intimidated about going to Washington. Nebraska has to come to you. We were always talking about like, oh, how's USC going to handle, playing in the Big Ten in November? Well, the 2024 schedule doesn't set up with a lot of those landmines in the way that you might have imagined it. So if we're trying to test what they're going to look like in the snowy elements, well, they can come back next year. So it is a bet on Miller Moss being a hit. That is, like, I'm absolutely going to admit that. But I think that Lincoln Riley will be able to get enough out of this group. I think that they will be able to be improved enough defensively. And yeah, I'm over here. I think there's a 9-3 football team.
I agree with Chip. This is 1-2 where we started off the show, and I think Tom said we've had thoughts all season long, like we don't want to change them. I feel like I've flipped a little bit on USC, because even when we were doing the top 25 show on HQ, I think I was with Chip, and they were like, who do you think's overrated? And I'm like, USC at 23. Why do they deserve this spot? And I do think they have to earn it, but I think they will. But I think some of my personal opinion on USC was based on how last year felt like a failure with Caleb Williams coming back and then falling well short of expectations. But if you went back, like the only team I thought that they lost to that in Utah there were probably two games that they probably could have or should have won those games, Utah and UCLA in the rivalry game. And those teams weren't awful. But like losing to Notre Dame when Caleb Williams had his worst game in college, I don't think there was any shame in that. Losing to Washington by 10, I don't think there was shame in that. Losing to Oregon the way they did, when that, like they lost to pretty good teams and they won the games they should have. And the defense was one of the worst in the country. Like, I feel like I can trust them to win the games they should. Like when I go do W's and write them down, I feel like I can trust them to do that. And I think the defense, again, we said this, I've said this on the record, is it's not the coaches, it's the personnel. I think the defense will be coached better. I think the personnel will be slightly better. So I think they'll be middle of the pack and defensively. And with Miller Moss, I look at the USC quarterback and say, you know what? If it's Miller Moss, it's great. He's going to have a really good year. If he doesn't, they're going to switch and they're going to make a change to Jaden Maeva, who will come in and put up numbers. Like there will be an offense that will put up points because I trust Lincoln Riley. And also I look at the games like where I'm concerned are the games that maybe Miller Moss is overwhelmed, but I don't know if he's overwhelmed in the games that I put up dubs for him, you know? So I feel pretty confident in the over.
I'm under here. But I will say something really positive about USC, or at least about the schedule. This was a bigger play for me earlier in the offseason than it is now, primarily because almost everybody on this schedule is worse now than they were a month ago.
Oh, because of injuries or development or new information?
Yeah. USC's schedule has gotten a lot easier over the last month. So, Michigan, nobody's really emerged as a standout quarterback. They still haven't named somebody. We'll see how that goes. But Wisconsin, definitely with some of the injury stuff there. Minnesota already with the back and the receiver, already dinged up. I was reading this morning, Ryan Burns thinks that some other backs are going to get carries in September. They played them in October 5th. So, what happens if that injury lasts one extra week? Penn State's not worse than I thought, basically. So that one doesn't really fit there. Maryland, but I mean, MJ Morris doesn't appear to be the guy for them. So I'm not real confident in Billy Edwards running out there. Rutgers, as we talked about with the linebacker injuries, I was already pretty down on Washington, obviously. Nebraska losing the left tackle, losing one of their better linebackers. UCLA, no change. And Notre Dame, losing a phenom left tackle and now having to likely start a true freshman. So I played some under 6.5, like plus 215 on this team earlier in the offseason because I thought the schedule was really that daunting. And I don't like USC's depth along the lines of scrimmage at all. But now I'm less confident in that bet, actually, because, again, as I think I just detailed, all of the teams they're playing got worse, or most of the important ones did. So, maybe LSU pushes them around the trenches on the opening night. That's very possible. And yet I still think they could go over this bet. We'll have to see. If they get that one, then I definitely think, that'll go over. But I'm under here. I worry about the right side of the offensive line, and I have this team power rated higher than I did last year. I actually think it's an improved team, despite the fact they lost Caleb Williams. And somebody will clip that if they go 4-8. I'll look like a total idiot, but I do think the defense.
That's what we're here for, bud. Don't worry about that.
The defensive improvement will be better, right? I think. Here's the question: who in this front seven would have started at UCLA last year?
Oh, Danton Lynn has a worse front seven than he did last year. Yeah.
Yeah. Like Bear Alexander and who?
Bear Alexander.
I think so too. Like if you want to argue Mascarenas, I get it. Like if you want to tell me if Gentry bounces back, okay. Like Mason Cobb's a nice player, but I'm very worried about their depth on the lines of scrimmage. So this could go south in a hurry. Give me the under. Maybe. I think they're very Auburnish, like 7-5, and my numbers is coming up a lot.
Yep.
How many games are going to win this fall?
Jed Fish showed up in Seattle, and the previous renters ripped everything off the wall. I mean, they walked into the rental house, they thought there was going to be furniture, and it was gone. So he had to bring his own. About a dozen players from Arizona, including leading rusher Joe Carter's as well. Also had to lean into the portal to help restock that Washington roster. He still was able to hold on to Will Rogers at the quarterback position. But as we're starting to look at this, we got a win total of 6.5. Bud, why don't you get us started here? What are you doing with the Huskies?
Under. And I think you'll hear from me tomorrow about this one too. I think this is under all day. I'm not super impressed with what they did in the transfer portal. Take all the comments I just made about USC's depth along lines of scrimmage and multiply it by like 1 billion. I do like the two receivers quite a bit. I think Hunter and Boston have something to them. If Will Rogers stays healthy, he could put up some big numbers. I certainly could see a path to a bowl. 6.5 though. I mean, 7-5 here. Are they favored over Washington State?
Yes.
Yeah.
By what?
50.
Oh. No.
Like a touchdown?
The Apple Cup at home, they'll be favored in that game.
All right. I guess. at Rutgers, like at Iowa, at Indiana, at Penn State, at Oregon, there's a lot of potential pitfalls here. I mean, if they're not as good as some people think, they could be dogs in the final 8 games. So I'm going under.
We had somebody in the chat before. I think I was referencing Rutgers beating Washington. Said, do you think they're going to go from national championship game to scrubs in the Big Ten or something like that? I don't think it's scrubs in the Big Ten. I just think I think it's very similar to what TCU had to deal with. Plus, you throw in the fact that they have an entire new staff and a new regime as well. We've talked a lot about how many players they've had to replace, about Jed Fish getting a little bit of a late start as well because the switch was made late. Like, this is a reboot in his words, right? Not rebuild, reboot.
He got mad at me when I said rebuild.
Yeah. So, and this was one of the ones where I was looking at over-unders and had to even them out. So I gave Rutgers the over and Washington the under. I don't feel great about it. I think Jed Fish is a great dude. I think he's a good coach. I think he'll get it figured out. I just think it could be a rough year one.
Yeah, I'm on the under as well, but this is another scenario where it's like, I don't know what this team is. It's all transfers. It's like a brand new coaching staff, and pretty much the entire depth chart is filled with guys who weren't there last year or weren't starters last year who received a lot of time. So it's hard for me to have a ton of faith in this thing going either way. So I'm on the under, but no confidence.
I can get you to 4 wins real easy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
First
start the
4 weeks.
season. Build up the confidence. Let's go.
And I am willing to add like a half game based on Jed Fish, and maybe willing to add a 0.25 of a game if the Florida job is coming open. I tell you what, you cannot win a press conference in Gainesville after going 5-7 in Seattle.
Missouri, Ole Miss, and Washington's going to have a score off that they open.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how you run this, where you find these wins. I've talked throughout this week about how Washington is a giant question mark team on everybody else's schedule, which leads to me staring at a ton of question marks on Washington's schedule. I'm struggling to find the confidence. I'm sure they will build the confidence as they stack those wins early, but getting those wins late, might mean that you've got to go beat Iowa in Kinnick. Hey, I'm not ready to bet on that. You're gonna go all the way to Piscataway? You're gonna go get that win? I don't know if I see it there.
You know when you could leave and hit the press conference when you're 5-4.
Resign. Resign with your winning record.
Just look at the schedules and look how they line up. I mean, one could be fired, another could be hired. Get the head start.
If Florida takes a sitting head coach, like we've taken sitting head coaches before a bowl game.
Oh yeah.
If he takes them before the regular season finale,
Before Thanksgiving.
Joe McGuire. When did Joe McGuire do it for? When did he wasn't a head coach though. That's a little different, slightly different.
Yeah. Oh man. All right.
They're going to play hard though.
They will play hard. That's what we know about Jed Fish's squads. Okay. Wrapping up the Big Ten with the Wisconsin Badgers year 2 for Luke Fickell and at FanDuel Sportsbook, where you can make every moment more. The over-under win total is at 6.5, over at -144, under at +118. Danny, why don't you bring us home?
Better team, same or worse record. So I have them under. I think they'll be better last year at a lot of positions. I think they'll be better on defense. I'm concerned about the Tyler Van Dyke experiment. Just don't know where he is mentally or kind of just where he is as a QB to execute in this offense. Like if I can trust him. And then the schedule is probably the biggest issue that I see. Starting with that September 4th game against Alabama. And then some of these, again, this was one of those ones where I hope I'm wrong, but I also had to even out the over-unders. And so I went under, but I would lean under anyway. But I think the schedule is brutal for Luke Fickell year 2. When he needs a schedule that kind of gets some positive mojo, it's not coming anytime soon.
Yeah, I'm
Agreed
on the
there.
under as well. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, the schedule plays a large role in it. You get Alabama at USC, you've got Penn State, you're at Iowa, you've got Oregon. It's like you don't have to play Ohio State and Michigan, and that's wonderful, but you're paying the price for it in other areas. Then also just roster wise, we've talked a lot about Tyler Van Dyke on this show. Is he the kid that he was as a freshman? He hasn't been, but this will also be, regardless of how you feel about him, this will be his 4th offensive coordinator in 4 years. And that's hard on anybody. But the reason to be optimistic is that the offense he'll be running here is very similar to the one he was running under Rhett Lashley when he was a freshman at Miami. So maybe they can tap into that. It's just, I like Will Pauling. I think CJ Williams has potential. But overall, I'm not overly high on the receiver core. I think the offensive linemen will be fine. I have concerns about their front 7 defensively, and that has been something that Wisconsin has typically been very good at year in and year out, and that's something Luke Fickell teams have been good at year in and year out. So there's reason to think that that'll work itself out. But right now, some concerns. I do like the secondary. Honestly, I feel like the secondary might be the one area of this team I am the most confident in. It's just when you're in the Big Ten, I don't know how much that matters, but they do have to play Alabama, USC, Oregon. So it will help them in some games, but it's just overall, I think this is probably a 6-6 team. I think that they can get to 7-5, 8-4 if things go well. If Tyler Van Dyke gets back to his old self, I think this team could really play, do a lot of damage. It's just based on what I see now and what I know now, I feel like 6-6 is more likely than 7-5.
Agree with Tom there. I'm a little bit less gun-ho about betting this under because of the positive reports from Van Dyke. I've been reading Badger 247. Nick Osen and Evan Flood do a great job there. And in the spring, I was like, oh, I'm definitely betting under Wisconsin. And I still am, but like a little bit less so now. I have them as underdogs in 6 games.
Yeah.
So that's, you got to pull an upset just to go over. Now they're small upsets, but I mean, they're also like a small-ish favorite at Rutgers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're not laying double digits in Piscataway, right? And I mean, what are they hosting Minnesota?
Oh, oh, come on. That's a win.
How they I mean,
how's the crowd in Madison on a season that's below expectations?
Cold.
Really? Drunk.
I will, you know what? I think that Madison's pretty good, although I will say at times when things aren't going well, that student section does empty out a little early.
It's a cool town, right? So
yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff. It's honest to God, if I'm power rating college towns in the Big Ten, Madison's number 1 by a mile.
That's a great town.
Mm-hmm.
Can you walk from the stadium to the bars?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
That was
warm.
That's one of the many big problems from North Carolina football. I mean, you can get to Franklin Street. It's not that far away.
Yeah.
So under?
Oh yeah.
Okay. I'm not betting it, but I'm gonna lean over, and it's because I'm not ready to chalk up some losses that I could see as losses. I don't love the fact that getting there is going to require going on the road and beating a team that you're either going to be an underdog on or a not huge favorite. But I am buying into Luke Fickell. I mean, it is just, I do not think that after seeing the way that he handled the Cincinnati program, both the success and just the way that he built that thing up, I just don't think that they're going to have another 6-6 type year. They very well could because the schedule's tough, but I'm adding just a little, as I'm trying to split hairs in those games that are going to be like the Iowa game, the Nebraska game, like coaching edge. Does Luke Fickell have a coaching edge against Matt Rule?
I think so. Yeah.
Doesn't have a quarterback edge, I think, is the bigger problem.
Quarterback edge, but I'm just kind of
though. I mean, if Van Dyke's bounce back, we still need to see Dylan play.
Mm-hmm.
Right. In Iowa, what's Tyler Van Dyke's the best quarterback on that field?
Is Nebraska's DC edge bigger than Wisconsin's OC edge?
Oh, that's a great battle.
I don't think so. I think Wisconsin's edge is bigger.
Yeah. I'm a slight lean to the over here, and but definitely not rushing to bet it. A lot of this coming down to trust in Fickle, and that team just to not fall as short of expectations as they did last year, because there were 2 WTF games for Wisconsin, horrendous injury luck. So ever so slightly to the over, but again, not going to be something that shows up on Thursday's locks. All right. Anything else? Final words? All right. Woo!
Tomorrow.
That's it. We did it. I mean, we even included Notre Dame. They cried so much that we even included Notre Dame. But tomorrow,
there were Notre Dame fans in the chat like backing up USC today. Like, what in the hell
Solidarity, man.
doing? Like, do you not know what a rivalry is? If
Maybe
there's a
Notre
rivalry power
Dame-
ranking anytime soon, I am knocking Notre Dame USC down like 2 tiers for that.
no, that means Notre Dame actually wants in the SEC. When you're rooting for your rivals and trying to fight for their
Up
reputation
ahead of me.
in other arguments, that means Notre Dame to the SEC is what the fan base wants. All right, tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern time, we got 2 tasks. Number 1, shouldn't take that long, but number 1, the week 0 locks. There's only 4 games on the schedule. What do we think? 7 locks?
I think I've got 1 right now, but I'm looking at another one. So
I've got 4 picks I got to make on CBS Sports Network later today. If they feel good as I'm explaining them, I might bring all 4 for the for the locks tomorrow. Then
workshop it on HQ.
yeah.
Oh,
Name
what do
it,
we got going on
team.
for
That's what it's for.
Yeah. And then a little bit longer, we are also going to be doing our win totals locks again, all that at 11 a.m. Then 3 p.m. Eastern time today will be the debut of the Cover 3 Fantasy Draft. That's right. The 4 of us participated in a 30-round fantasy draft. Power conference players only, 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 1 flex. We're going to be playing best ball. For those of you who are familiar with the method where it takes your best players, puts together the lineup for you so that we don't have to make those kinds of decisions. If you want to get set for your upcoming college fantasy draft, check it out, 3 p.m. Eastern time, making its debut on YouTube and wherever else you find the Cover 3 podcast. And you can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fornelli. You can follow him at Danny Cannell. You can follow him at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
See y'all.
See ya.